If you like our content, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get alerts when we introduce new videos.
In this module, we're going to continue with our debugging thread. So in this particular case, we're now going to take a look at how we can debug and figure out what's going on with plugins in the IoT controller, and how we can use the log files for those plugins to detect if there's a problem or if there is an issue with the connection between the IoT controller and the plugin services. So as before, we log into our IoT controller and we can see in this particular case we have one access point and no devices connected. So this particular access point is being reported as being a BLE access point, and if we open our IoT APs tab, you can see that we have one access point, its MAC address, its IP address, and that its protocol is configured as BLE. So you can also see that this particular version we have this access point is configured to support both iBeacon and Contact IO plugins, so to forward data for both of those particular plugins. Now the process for all of the plugins is basically the same. So if we go to the admin tab and we take a look at the plugins tab, we can see all of the active plugins that have been enabled within this IoT controller. So we have a Contact IO and an iBeacon forwarding engine plugin both enabled. So if we open the iBeacon plugin here now, we can see that the configuration and settings for this particular plugin are configured as follows. So the device is configured to forward all iBeacon data to a URL of a offsite controller or an offsite rules engine or an offsite application, its port number, and a HTTP endpoint, API endpoint. Now you can see immediately that this particular configuration is being reported back that the status is not reachable. So the plugin is not able to reach this particular combination of settings for this particular end application. And the reason being is that this particular one has the wrong IP address. So if I change the IP address and the port number and the endpoint to match now my application that is running on a third-party rules engine, we should be able to make that connect. Again, we can also open up the view, the logs, and you can see that the information is in here. There is actually a set of data in here, but what I'll do is I can close the log, and what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on the timestamp in a second as we update this. So we can see at the moment it's saying it's not reachable, so we'll update that. So we've updated our configuration on our iBeacon. So if we now open our iBeacon again, and now we can see that it's reporting that it's reachable. So the IoT controller is now able to connect and forward information to our server based on these configuration parameters. So additionally, now we can open our log file, so we can view our logs, and we can now see the information. Now what we should see is that our endpoint ID and more importantly our epoch time here has changed. So again, we can refresh this, and over a period of time as we push data to the remote device, we'll see that our log file is going to provide us information. And this is based on a standard HTTP push request or post request, because that's what I'm doing on the other end of this. So we can clearly see though that we're getting responses from our rules engine telling us that everything is okay on the other side. Now we can do the same thing now with our Contact IO plugin. So here we've activated a Contact IO plugin, and we can see here that we've configured our plugin as per the Contact IO panel. We're forwarding with our API key, with our destination URL and the version of the API that we're using. And again, you can see the status is being reported as reachable. So our credentials and our endpoint URL and version IDs are all correct for the Contact IO cloud. And again, we can look at our log file and we can see again that we're getting valid and data responses back from the Contact IO cloud, telling us that it's accepting the data that we are pushing from the IoT controller. And again, if we were to actually now go to the Contact IO cloud, we should be able to see this access point has been onboarded into the Contact IO cloud. So that completes the configuration and simple debugging of advanced active plugins within the IoT controller, and how you can use those to debug and check connectivity between the IoT controller and third-party application services.